Welcome, YouTube. My name is Politics World. I love anything to do with the political field and uh, political developments in the international world. I'm kind of new to YouTube, or domestic world for that matter. Kind of new to YouTube. I haven't got all the bugs worked out yet in terms of fancy editing or anything like that, so bear with me as I share some thoughts on President Trump's strike on Iran. So I hope you enjoy the piece that I have written and you can share your comments on it.
President Donald Trump's foreign policy, preemption and peace. President Donald Trump's decision to strike Iran's nuclear sites represents a seismic shift in the politics of the Middle East. With the striking of these three Iranian nuclear sites of Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, President Trump has signaled, beyond the shadow of any doubt, that the ability of the United States to defend its own geopolitical interests as well as international norms of human rights and the individual sovereignty and security of all nations will not be deterred or diluted, but strengthened to spectacular effect. The decision to stop the production of Iran's nuclear program represents a clear foreign policy victory for the people of Israel, but in a broader sense. It also represents a victory for the international norms of state security and sovereignty for all nations. Since it declared it had the ability to enrich uranium to 3.5% in the Natanz facility, the state of Israel had been forced to live with the uneasy reality that one day they could be the target of a unilateral Iranian nuclear attack. The fear of this threat seemed to have been greatly heightened 5 years later in 2011 when Iran developed its first nuclear power reactor. These developments would eventually garner the attention of the international community in 2013 when the Obama administration, in an effort to deter any further development of Iran's nuclear program which would be dedicated to military purposes, proposed the Iran nuclear deal, otherwise known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, whereby China, France, Germany, Russia, and the United States would agree to lift economic sanctions on Iran in exchange for the Iranian government's promise to scale back its production of enriched uranium. The Iran nuclear deal was an executive agreement proposed by the Obama administration to limit, on an economic and diplomatic basis, Iran's offensive use of uranium enrichment. By the time President Trump took office in January of 2017 during his first term, the Iran nuclear deal had failed in its chief purpose. While economic sanctions were loosened on the Iranian government, they actively reneged on their promise to end offensive nuclear enrichment, while still receiving economic and diplomatic support from Bashar Assad in Syria and Vladimir Putin in Russia. 6 months into his second term in 2025, President Trump and the mullahs in Iran both find themselves in very different political positions. While President Trump had resolved as a presidential candidate in 2016 that Iran should not and would never obtain a nuclear weapon under his administration, by 2017 the reality of intervening directly with military force to stop the Iranians was far more complex and perplexing for the president and other U.S. officials. The Obama administration, by failing to enforce its self-imposed red line on the Assad regime after it used chemical weapons on its own people in 2013 during the Syrian civil war, seemed to strengthen the Assad government as an Iranian ally. Indeed, the companion failure of the Obama administration in 2014 when it chose not to directly challenge or mediate Russia's first invasion of Ukraine's Crimea region also strengthened Russian-Iranian hegemony in the region, especially when Russian troops stepped into Syria to prop up the increasingly unpopular Assad regime. By late 2024, however, the geopolitical fortunes of Iran began to change. Bashar Assad's government would eventually be toppled in a popular uprising. Vladimir Putin would become bogged down in its protracted 2022 invasion of Ukraine, and Donald Trump would secure a historic political comeback in winning back the White House in November. Today, at the time this piece is being written, the world is a very different place. The Sunni Arab world is closer than it's ever been to achieving a lasting peace with Israel. This is not due to any typical act of standard diplomacy, whereby the United States dictates to the nations it seeks to bring peace to a list of specific or draconian unilaterally directed terms and conditions they must meet from Washington. The Trump administration's approach to foreign policy, as articulated in the Abraham Accords of President Trump's first term in 2020, is based in the mutual economic development and prosperity of the region whereby all the nations of the Middle East, whether Sunni, Shia, or Jewish, can prosper in mutual security and economic partnerships. The question that the mullahs of Iran must now answer is if they seek to moderate their stance on Israel and the United States to salvage their waning political legitimacy. The most probable alternative is that the Iranian regime, as it exists in its current form, will fall to domestic popular pressure and that a democratic, or at least less autocratic government will replace it. Whether the catalyst for that is a second U.S. strike against Iran in retaliation for its striking U.S. military assets or citizens remains to be seen. But one thing can be said for certain, and that is that President Trump, Israel, and indeed the whole world has been given a golden opportunity to establish and maintain a perpetual lasting peace in the Middle East. If the Iranian regime falls, there is a good chance that Hamas in Gaza will fall as well. If that reality comes to fruition, the Middle East will be poised for great peace and prosperity that could last into the next century. The opportunity for such a change has never been more possible, and the opportunity is waiting to be grasped.
Well, there you have it. That's my take on the consequences of, and largely positive consequences, I might add, of Donald Trump's intervention to bomb Iran's nuclear capabilities. I'm curious, do you agree with my general premise that if the Iranian regime falls, Hamas in Gaza will fall as well? Do you agree with that, or do you think the Iranian dictatorship will come to the bargaining table to preserve what's left of its political legitimacy? Let me know in the comments. I know this video is a little rough, but this is my first foray into YouTube and I'm just getting used to the ropes. Thank you for watching.